This is AWS On Air, and we've got a really exciting topic today about things VR, all things from NVIDIA. So let's hear from them. But first, I'll do some intros of who's on today. So I'm your host, and my name is Jillian Ford, and I am a startup solutions architect. So let's hear from Greg and David. Greg, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Greg Jones. I'm with NVIDIA's XR team. I do product management and business development for the group.
Perfect. Great to be here. I'm David Randall. I'm the global head of go-to-market for spatial computing here at Amazon Web Services.
So the topic today is about VR. And I mean, it's been something in history where not everyone's had it. There's been a lot of hype, but there's still so much promise going on with the Metaverse and that area really of what we're about to see that's still so new. So if you could tell us more about really a little bit about the history you think of VR, some of the limitations, and now with some advancements, where do you see VR really going?
You bet. So, VR is a really young market. So the history is pretty condensed, but just a few years ago, a VR user was defined by someone with a headset tethered to a high-powered PC. And the reason you have high-powered PCs is the graphic rendering requirement for VR is pretty extreme, right? You're rendering stereo, it's high-resolution stereo, and you're rendering anywhere from 70 to 120 frames per second. So a really demanding rendering task for a pretty high-end GPU. So we started this with tethered headsets. Every user was defined by having a equivalent of a 3090 GPU and a $3,000 workstation plus. And so we saw the VR market growing relatively slow. We thought it'd go crazy, but like most things in hype cycles, it hyped and settled down. And then a couple headset manufacturers came out with mobile headsets, and Oculus came out with one, HTC came out with one, Pico came out with one. These headsets were defined by a really powerful yet small GPU SoC built by Qualcomm, essentially. So all three of those headsets, the Oculus Quest 2, the HTC Vive Focus 3, the Pico Neo 3, they all three have the Qualcomm XR2 chipset in there. In that chipset is an Adreno GPU. That GPU is probably a 4 to 5 watt GPU. When I put that power out there, think of that as compared to a 3090, which is running about 300 watts. So you can see the power envelope of these really large GPUs is pretty significantly different than the power envelope of the mobile GPU, because it's going to be battery powered. It's going to sit on your head. But what the mobile GPUs in these mobile headsets did is a VR user was now defined by, I put a headset on and I'm in VR. I don't need a PC. I don't need external tracking. These mobile headsets do everything internally. They track with internal gyros and such. And suddenly, a Beat Saber player, the only thing they needed was a $300 to $400 headset. Put it on, click on Beat Saber, you're in a virtual environment. And we saw the usership probably multiply by 10x, right? From 2 to 3 million headsets out there to 20 million headsets. So a definite strike in the market. What that left behind was still the VR user that wanted to play, Half-Life Alyx, or wanted to run a design review of a photoreal car in an enterprise setting. So that separation of the mobile headset from the large GPU was great for accelerating the market, redefining the user, but it left the users that want high-end VR stuck to that workstation still. So a few of our engineers really grooved on this idea, this problem, and they created a thing called CloudXR. It's an SDK. You can get it from our website. You just search NVIDIA and CloudXR, and you can find the site and register for it and download the SDK. And it comes in a thing that sits on a server, and then it also has a package that sits on headsets. And we make a client, a sample client for Oculus Quest, for the Pico Neo 3, and for the Focus 3, and a variety of other devices, including tablets and such. But the point of that is we can now, with CloudXR, stream from a remote workstation with a large GPU to these mobile headsets. And step that up a factor, we can actually put that server, we can actually put that SDK on an instance in the Amazon cloud, and we can stream remotely over native network, over the internet, to a headset just about anywhere you can get signal. So what that means is, I can play Alex Half-Life in my front yard on my Oculus Quest from an Amazon Web Services data center in Oregon. I'm in Utah. And have a great experience with a full-fledged Alex Half-Life on this mobile headset. And I could do design review also. I probably should try that, but I end up in Alex Half-Life in my yard. But you can get full fidelity VR from the cloud, and it's really astounding. We didn't think it would work. We were amazed when it did, and it's really a turn of events.
In fact, when we were doing early testing, our SA did exactly that, right? Used Half-Life Alyx as an example, testing from Vancouver or one of the islands near Vancouver to the data center in Oregon too. So G5s, in fact, G5s weren't even out at the time, right? So this was running on G4 DN, but now it would be a G5 workload and delivering that experience was totally possible, right? He was able to get through Half-Life Alyx in its entirety as testing, right, for more enterprising use cases. But just thought that was a funny story to add to Greg's experience as well.
Yeah, so we've got some gaming, obviously, of course, is like such a no-brainer use case, really. So what are some other use cases that you're seeing right now, for XR, and maybe you anticipate going forward?
Well, the big, the group I'm in, the XR group in NVIDIA is focused on enterprise, right? So that's our market. And one application we've seen VR growing in very quickly is training. So being able to train in a virtual environment before you step into a dangerous or high risk environment or an environment where you need a lot of expertise, doing that virtually has really, people have found a ton of value in that. Another place that we see, and this is where this VRED design review system comes in from Autodesk, another system we've seen is if you have a model that is really expensive and you don't want to build it physically until you're sure, even the prototype is millions of dollars to build a prototype, you should do that in virtual reality. And so if I can show you what your car, your next generation of Porsche or Audi or whatever will look like, if your engineers can see that and your executives can see that before you build a clay model, before you actually roll out a prototype, that's a huge value add. And if I can do it collaboratively, if I can have multiple people in the room talking around this beautiful digital model, that's the enterprise use case that I really get excited about. Because you get that full collaboration experience. I was in a VR system a few months ago, and it was what they call pass-through. So you see the background room, and you see the digital cars put in the background room. And I forgot I was in VR. It was so photoreal, and I leaned against the car, and the car, of course, wasn't there, right? So when we talk about photorealism, that's the photorealism, so real that you actually feel like you're in with the real asset, right? A full physical asset. But doing that design review where you haven't had to build that physical asset is a huge deal.
And that use case resonates personally, by the way. My background's industrial design, specifically automotive design. And so I spent many years helping automotive manufacturers visualize their designs, right, before as virtual prototypes before ever having to produce scale models. And there's still a place for scale models, don't get us wrong, but most of the early design iterations can be optimized significantly. And so this use case that Greg alludes to about virtual design reviews kind of hits home. And it's been one of the more exciting examples of a third party, in this case Autodesk, leveraging the AMI, the Amazon Machine Image for CloudXR, that helps create those pixels in the cloud on G5s and deliver that to designers and executives and other stakeholders wherever they are, so they can collaborate together in one virtual space on that future design of the vehicle. And so this is one example. It's a kind of a sneak peek that I'm revealing here, but expect more to come on this. But that's one very clever, very unique, very valuable use case that's attached to what CloudXR enables.
Yeah, and then David, just from your experience, you've seen companies of so many different industries too. Are any other use cases that you anticipate now with really the future of VR, of like really maybe the metaverse?
Yeah. Yeah, you had to bring up the word, right? Metaverse. It's hard to talk
That's
about
every.
XR these days
It's
without
a
that,
buzzword.
that
Everyone's
sneaking
thinking
in.
about it.
But while we're on that topic, I guess, one of the exciting future thinking use cases, which is there's quite a number of companies starting to innovate here already, and it's going to require some patience, right? And pushing the limits a little bit. But if you think about a future state where you can start to experience concerts, with your friends, with social behavior from wherever you are, with a fidelity that's arguably even better than sitting in the front row of a real concert, right? You'll start to see this happening, and we're working with some interesting customers that are doing exactly this. And it's quite frankly streaming, right? Getting those pixels created in the cloud and delivering them to eyeballs is what makes all the difference in creating a future for these technologies and for these experiences. And actually, this isn't even for us, right? If you think about the next generation, right, the kids that are growing up playing Roblox and Fortnite and Minecraft, right? Those are kind of early metaverse experiments, if you will. But they're what's being effective is that they're training the next generation for how to interact in the future, and that will transcend work, right? Future of work. It's why XR experiences are starting to get so much investment. It's why the term metaverse is becoming a bit more popularized. But it's that generation that's going to expect these kind of experiences, and tools like CloudXR and cloud streaming are absolutely critical to creating this future.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
I want to riff a little bit off that idea of collaborating in these worlds, like in Fortnite, where you're building worlds together. That if you think of metaverse in that stage, and then take it to the next level, like an architecture project. Let's say I'm in an architecture project. I get to see things at scale. So a 40-foot wall looks like a 40-foot wall. I don't have to use my imagination, because I'm always wrong, right? I never get to scale quite right if I'm just trying to do it in my head. But now I walk in that environment. I build something with collaborators in the virtual environment. I put this beautiful virtual scene together. I have artificial intelligence in there using cloud services to do the analysis of the heating and cooling with me. So not only am I getting the visual, but I'm getting the information from the AIs, the artificial intelligence agents, on how this all works. And then when it's time to build that, I go out in the real world, I build it. I send pictures of it back through my AR glasses now to that same virtual environment. My AIs look at that newly built system and say, hey, we see some information that's working right or it's working wrong. Here's some contextualization of that thing we just built together in the real world, and here's how it's running, right? So you get this whole kind of virtuous thing going. I build in the virtual world with AIs. They help me understand how it's instantiated in the real world, and we just get to operate it better, right? So so I'm collaborating not just with other people, but I'm collaborating with these artificial intelligence agents also, and they all live in the Amazon cloud, which is really, really cool.
I think that's a use case that's not going to go away, and it's going to only continue. At least I know with the startups that I work with early stage, I see more and more startups now where their businesses now are fully remote, and their people are from all over the world, and they're starting to really have to think about innovative ways to be able to build together and to collaborate together.
That's right.
And I think so. Now that we've touched on these use cases that are currently actually being built right now, and there's some that are going to be built for the future, there's a lot of developers that are out there that have development experience. Maybe they've been web developers before, but they want to get in on like VR development. They want to go on what's cutting edge. So for people with those skills, is CloudXR something that is accessible or transferable to them?
Yeah, absolutely. There's multiple ways. I think the easiest way to make sure you have the right equipment, you get the software running correctly, just go into Marketplace and grab the AMI of CloudXR running on a T4, right? It's a really cost efficient way to just jump in, use the right computer. You need to get the client from our website, but the documentation's all there on both the AMI and in our website. So just jump on and give it a run, right? It's really quick. I've seen people up and running inside of 15 minutes. It takes me longer, but I'm technologically challenged. But it's a great way to introduce yourself to this streaming VR type of landscape.
Yeah, I would say the getting started with CloudXR is not the hurdle, right? It's actually figuring out how it's going to benefit the right application, the right use case. But that's why we're here, right? We're here to encourage the developer community to think about where you can benefit or where your customer can benefit from creating pixels in the cloud and then delivering those to a user, whether it's across training, across media entertainment use cases, across industrial applications, you name it. And this will be that first toe in the water to get you started.
Yeah. And I love, Greg, that you just called out that you could use a T4 because something like this, I can imagine someone's listening and they're probably like, oh, it probably requires GPUs. GPUs are going to be maybe, they could be more expensive than using a T4 instance. So being able to start with something as a T4 is just like a fantastic way to start being able to get exposed to what's so exciting.
Yeah, as soon as you get a bigger workload, you're going to need to move to that G5 instance.
Yeah.
You know, we'll hook everybody on the T4 and then move them up to chain.
Yeah, but the performance absolutely is crucial.
Mm-hmm.
So I know you mentioned just briefly about the NVIDIA CloudXR is in the marketplace. But is there anything else that you want to actually expound on that so people kind of have a better idea of really what's the best way for them to get started?
Well, there's a lot of videos out there, and certainly there's old GTC, NVIDIA GTC sessions on CloudXR in general, but we have some really nice coming up material. Dave and I are both presenting at Autodesk University. Dave's going to be presenting on the VRED work that they're doing now that he gave a little sneak peek on, and I'll present on actually collaborating with these artificial intelligence agents in using speech AI to control VRED. So instead of having to open up a GUI, occlude the data, and know the program, you can just say, paint the car red, and the car paints red, right? So we'll show some AI workloads at Autodesk University. And then I think, kind of futurescape, a panel I'm excited about, especially since I'm not on it, is coming up at GTC Fall, which is coming up in, I think, September. And Dave is on that panel for AWS, and then we've got a Verizon rep and a Ericsson rep on there, along with an NVIDIA moderator. And they're going to talk about what 5G means to CloudXR and this evolving VR ecosystem. And that will give a really nice futurescape of what Verizon's doing in this space, how they're using the AWS infrastructure to do it, and how CloudXR sits on these Ericsson 5G networks and powers it all along. So really exciting future pieces of content out there.
Wow. And for those who haven't actually been to one of these on NVIDIA GTC conferences, is there anything else that maybe you want to share about maybe some other things that they can expect?
There's such a load of material available at GTC. It's free. The on-demand series is free. Just register as a NVIDIA developer, which is an easy club to get into. And I think we're always excited. Jensen, our CEO, always gives a keynote, and it's always fantastical. And so the keynote is a highlight. I think this panel will be a highlight. I'm giving a talk on this Project Melon, which is the speech AI thing. So there's just, and that's the not even the tip of the iceberg. That's like floating up to the tip of the iceberg. There's so many sessions at GTC on things all the way from artificial intelligence to new graphics algorithms to all kinds of stuff. So it's really a fun conference to go in and just geek out on all these presentations.
Just geek out. I love it. I mean, I think maybe we'll end on that. So Greg, thank you so much for telling us all about CloudXR and
thanks
David,
for having me.
So much for sharing us more about your insights on VR. This is AWS On Air. Tune in weekly for more updates and information about AWS. Thank you so much.